Hey, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Shanae, and today we're going to make light and airy sponge cake. Sponge cake is a type of foam cake where the tall and airy texture comes from whipped eggs instead of chemical leavening agents like baking soda or baking powder. This recipe calls for only 3 ingredients and it's really easy to make, and sponge cake is a perfect base for different kinds of layer cakes. It's very versatile and easy to flavor and decorate. While sponge cake is beautifully tall and fluffy, this cake is not moist kind of cake. But that's advantage of this cake because once it's baked and sliced and before layering into the cake, you can drizzle different kinds of syrups, fruit sauces, and liqueurs to flavor the sponge cakes. And once it's assembled, it's not going to taste dry at all. So for this recipe, you will need eggs, a little bit salt, sugar, and cake flour. To begin with, we're going to separate the eggs. It's best to separate the eggs while they are cold. It's easiest to separate because you don't want any egg yolks in your egg whites, because any contact with yolk or fat, egg whites won't reach to its potential volume. So I'm going to add all my egg whites into the mixing bowl. And last one. By the way, room temperature egg whites whip better, so I recommend to separate the egg yolks and egg whites right away out of the fridge and let them sit at the room temperature before whipping, because that way you'll get as much air into your egg whites and egg yolks to create that light and airy texture. Now I have my sugar in 2 separate bowls. We're going to add 1 part of the sugar in egg whites and 1 part of the sugar in with egg yolks. So I have 1 cup of sugar, half a cup in each bowl. So now we'll start whipping the egg whites until it's nice and foamy, and then we'll start adding the sugar 1 tablespoon at a time, and we'll whip it until it reaches hard peaks. It will take about 10 minutes. We don't have to whip it on low speed, on steady speed at all. We can gradually increase the speed from low to medium high until it reaches nice and hard peaks. If you haven't watched my French meringue 101 video, I will link it up here, so go ahead and watch it after this video, because I share all my knowledge about meringue and the science behind it to achieve the perfect meringue. So egg whites are getting foamy, so I'm going to start adding sugar. So my meringue is ready. Make sure not to over whip your meringue, otherwise it won't have nice airy texture. You want your meringue still nice and glossy with hard peaks, like so. Now, I'm going to transfer my egg whites into a clean bowl, because we're going to whip egg yolks in this mixer. If you're using just 1 bowl, mixing bowl, don't whip your egg yolks first, because then you'll have to wash everything. And this way, we don't need to wash egg whites. We just simply need to put egg yolks into the bowl with the sugar, and then we will whip egg yolks with sugar for about 5 minutes until it triples in size and it gets really pale mixture. And see you in 5 minutes. So my egg yolks are super thick and pale yellow. Can you see how much more volume it has now? Some sponge cake recipes don't require separating egg whites with yolks, and they mix it all together. You can absolutely do that, but I prefer separating because it takes longer for eggs to reach the highest volume when they're together. So it's just a matter of time. If you have time and you don't want to go through the pain of separating egg yolks and whites, you can go ahead and mix them together, but you just need to make sure they have as much air as possible. It can take up to 30 minutes to whip. It still should be like really thick mixture. Again, this is very crucial because this cake gets all its volume from whipped eggs, from the air in the egg mixture. Without that air whipped into this batter, the cake will be flat. So now what we'll do is we'll take about a third of the meringue and add it into my egg yolk mixture, and then we'll fold it gently. Now this is really important to fold the batter very gently because we want to retain as much air as possible in the batter to get that beautiful fluffy texture. The reason we have to add egg whites in stages is because it's really hard to incorporate meringue into the egg yolk mixture because it's denser. And now when we add meringue in stages, it helps to incorporate it nicely without deflating. Now once it's completely incorporated, we can go ahead and add the rest of the meringue, and again really gently. Most of the egg whites are incorporated. We're going to go ahead and add flour. I have cake flour here. If you don't have cake flour, don't worry. Take 1 cup of all-purpose flour, remove 2 tablespoons of flour, and replace with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Sift it together and you will get a homemade cake flour. I'm adding a little bit salt into the flour. And then we'll sift the flour into the eggs. Cake flour tends to clump easily. This is exactly why we want to sift it. Otherwise, you'll have lumps of flour in your mixture and you don't want to overmix the batter once you add flour. Now, very gently, we're going to mix everything together. By the way, my oven is preheated to 350 degrees. Again, very gently. I love this spatula, all one piece. I've already told you before in my previous videos. This is from Temuujin, really large, and it's really easy. There's no like crevices or anything. I think we got it. Now, let's prepare the baking pans. So for this recipe, you can use one 9-inch cake pan, round cake pan, but in this case, you want to have at least 2 inches tall, and this creates one really tall sponge cake, and you can slice it into 3 layers. Sometimes that's what I do when I need 9-inch cake. You can also use 2 8-inch cake pans. Also make sure you have to have at least 2 inches tall so that there's room for your batter to rise. Or you can use 3, 7, or 6 inches of cake pan. Now let me show you how to cut parchment paper for lining your cake pans. It's really easy. So take a sheet of parchment paper, fold it in half, and then fold it again. And then now we'll fold. Okay, so we have 2 sheets because we're going to cut 2 rounds from this sheet. We're going to fold it one more time, and then one more time. How many times did we fold it? 1, 2, and 3. So on the third time, here, we're going to use this corner and fold this rectangular into triangle. And one more triangle. Like so. Now we'll take the cake pan, put this corner of the triangle right in the middle in the center of your cake pan. Press it down and Run your finger right against this end of your bottom of the cake pan so that you know the diameter. And then this is where we're going to cut, and you will get 2 circles. There you go. How easy is that? Actually, we should have done this before we started making our cake, but that's all right. The reason for it is because we don't want to have your batter sit around too long because it starts deflating. So we need to hurry up. And there's no need to grease the pan. Actually, you don't want to grease the pan because you want your batter to stick to the sides of your cake pan, and that's how it will rise. Now we'll divide the batter. I usually sometimes weigh it when I need precise equal amount of batter, but I've done it many times, so I kind of know how much batter to add into each one. You can weigh the batter. It's about 283 per pan when you're dividing into 3 pans. We'll level the batter in the pan. Now what we'll do is we'll tap each cake pan on the counter so that large air bubbles can disperse, and then we'll run a knife or toothpick in the batter so there's no large air pockets. That's it. Now we're gonna bake it for about 25 minutes for 6-inch pans. For one 9-inch pan, you wanna bake it for about 40 minutes. So have to watch for it. All the details about baking time and the baking pan sizes, you can find it in the recipe post. So if you need to check it out, you don't have to memorize that. So I'll show you when they come out. So my cakes just came out of the oven. They baked completely. To check for doneness, insert a toothpick into the cake center, and if it comes out clean, that means they baked. Take them out and cool completely in their pans, and once it's cooled, run a knife around the edges of the cake and cake pan to detach the cake from the pan, and flip them over, and it should come out perfectly because on the bottom we're layered in the parchment paper, so it won't have any problems coming out. Now, you don't want to slice the cake layers right away when they're warm or room temperature. Fresh cakes are very fragile, and that's why I recommend to make the layers in advance, at least the night before, or chill them in the fridge for up to a week. You can actually freeze them for a month, and I'll show you how I prepare them in advance. I wrap each layer in a plastic wrap, and then I freeze them in a freezer bags. That way they will hold their shape really well. So look at how tall this cake is. This is 2 inches tall, 6 inches in diameter, and I'm going to cut it in half. I like to use this Wilton cake cutter because it's just super convenient. You don't have to measure or anything. You just hold it and just gently sew through the cake, and that's about it. I do have an elaborate cutting system as well, but that's too cumbersome, and once I found this tool, I have never looked back. Look at that. Beautiful cake layers. How gorgeous is this? Again, this is not moist kind of cake, and you do want them liberally brush them with simple syrup. Simple syrup is really easy to make. Basically 1 part water, 1 part sugar, cook it until nice and thick, and then you can just brush it on. You can use different types of liqueur. For example, I use coffee for my tiramisu cake. I use the same sponge cake recipe, base recipe. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to frost a perfect layer cake. It's going to be a really in-depth tutorial on frosting that beautiful, even buttercream frosting all around. And if you're interested in that tutorial, please subscribe to my channel and then come back next week. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this was helpful and interesting. If you learned something new or if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you, and until next time, have a great day. Bye.